Sapa Ahmad Abdullah Kasawani will be some late, so she will be arrive at about 2:30. Okay. Okay, are you ready to start? Yep. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the afternoon session of conference. My name is Jongyul Park. I'm currently working at CBS Korea as an editorial writer, and I'm former president of Journlaists Association of Korea. And I made a World Journalist Conference for the first time in Korea in 2013. I'm very glad to meet all of you, and I'm very honored to preside this afternoon session. First of all, to be honest, I'm a little nervous. That's why I'm still not confident in English. So please understand me, and I will do my best for you. Now we have to talk about the role of media for world peace. Here, together with me, 4 distinguished panelists. Let me briefly introduce panelists to you. On the right, we have Mr. Zhang Yong, a deputy director of the People's Daily, #1 newspaper in China. Please give him a big applause. Then, Ms. Lin Walshi, she is working at NBC7 San Diego as an investigative executive producer and national president of the Society of Professional Journalists in the United States. And then on my left, we have Mr. Dong-Yul Hong, professor and president at Daegu University and Daegu Cyber University. For reference, Daegu is the #3 metropolitan city in Korea. And then we have Mr. Woo-seok Kenneth Choi, deputy editor of the Joseon Daily, #1 newspaper in Korea. And he currently vice president of Journalists Association of Korea. Before we start, I'd like to ask 4 panelists as a moderator. Please make the presentation time about between 10 and 15 times. And after presentation, I will ask you one by one a representative question. And then I will give the floor time to individual questions. So let's hear presentation from now on, where maybe start from Mr. Zhang Yong. Yeah. Okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. It is a great pleasure to be here in Seoul and attending the World Journalists Conference 2017. As a representative of the Chinese media professionals, I would like to warmly congratulate on the opening of the conference. And I also want to thank the conference organizers of the Korean Journalists Association. You have impressed us with your hospitality and efficiency. This is my second time to be part of this important meeting. The first time was in 2015. I had a chance to visit the non-military zone along the 38th parallel. It was a very impressive journey. After so many years since the end of the war, the peace has yet to come into reality. I was wondering what has prevented peace from arriving in the peninsula. I regret to see the nuclear issue remains in a deadlock, and a new crisis is emerging. The situation is even more complicated. In my country, the media and the public have paid their utmost attention to the situation of the peninsula. From the media of both China and South Korea, I discovered some high-pitched finger-pointing editorials against the other party. This is something I have never seen in my 24-year career as a journalist. Mainstream media of China opposed the nuclear program of North Korea, and we support the government efforts in imposing economic sanctions on the country. We insist that denuclearization of the peninsula is the fundamental principle that must be observed. All parties concerned and the international society should work together to bring North Korea to the negotiation table and resolve the issue through peaceful means. Although the six-party talks had witnessed a turbulent journey, it was the only effective way to exert influence on North Korea. The Chinese media are more concerned with the recent THAAD issue. We believe that THAAD will open the Pandora's box. First, North Korea will take more reckless actions under new pressure, and it may never come back to negotiation. Second, China's national security and strategic interests will be greatly challenged and undermined. China is bound to take countermeasures in a serious manner. People's Daily, or 人民日报, recently warned in its editorial that relevant countries should not underestimate China's strong will and military mind to defend its national security. Few people in China think that the THAAD battery to be deployed in South Korea has effect in shielding the threat from the north side of the peninsula. But it has a major role to play for the United States of America to put half territory of China under its radar surveillance. Targeting North Korea is an elaborate deception to hide its real intent. Third, the balance of power in the Northeast Asia and the whole world will be changed, and the new round of arms race triggered. Russia is also to take countermeasures and enhance its military capability in the region. Japan and more other countries may deploy THAAD system. The tension in the region will remain high. Last but not least, every party in the region will face a lose-lose situation, and the world peace will be impaired. South Korea will not be able to get the security under the THAAD system. On the contrary, it may find itself in a more jeopardized situation. The relations between China and South Korea will be crippled. In the past 25 years, the two countries made great efforts to establish diplomatic relations and build friendly cooperation, and all that now may be ruined overnight. The instability of the region is not in the interest of the United States of America, the only superpower in the world. Its global leadership can only be sustained by providing peace and security, but not creating unrest in the world. If the THAAD issue is considered a black swan event, the Korean Peninsula may become a lake for many black swans. Please allow me to go back to the question of why peace is delayed in Peninsula. People tend to discuss this question from the perspective of national interests and balance of power. Today, I want to talk about this issue from the angle of perception. Human behavior is determined by their perception, and misperception will not lead to right behavior. After the Cold War, people all over the world thought they would live in peace forever. The reality was quite different. We have seen the world's hotspot on the rise, not in decline. We have seen tensions in the hotspot area escalating, not easing. Interventionism has arguably led to massive humanitarian disasters, and military strikes in certain areas have resulted in spreading terrorist attacks. In hotspots, security situation is deteriorating and people flee away from their home. In some Western countries, people are also under threats of terrorism and are living in reduced sense of security. It has been proven that international disputes must be resolved in peaceful means. We must refrain from using force or threat of force in achieving lasting peace and security. We must reflect on how to make peace and security. Our action to safeguard national interests and regional security depends on our values and the security concept. China holds that it is necessary to advocate common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security in Asia. Mr. Xi Jinping, President of China, said at an Asian Security Summit that one cannot live in the 21st century with the outdated thinking of the era of the Cold War and a zero-sum game. Security must be universal. We cannot have security of just one or a few countries while leaving the rest insecure. In no way can we accept the so-called absolute security of one at the expense of the security of the others. Otherwise, as a proverb goes, one who tries to blow out another's oil lamp will get his beard singed. In March 2016, the United Nations Security Council issued a resolution of imposing sanctions on North Korea and called for restart of six-party talks. It is what China sticks to consistently. There have been two approaches to cope with the North Korea nuclear issue: dialogue and confrontation. From 2003 to 2009, the dialogue on the issue had been effective in calming down North Korea, and the situation on the peninsula was relatively stable. Since 2009, the talks had been suspended and the issue dealt with through confrontational means. The situation has appeared to be a vicious circle. Nuclear tests led to sanctions, and the sanctions led to new tests, and it goes on and on. At the end of the day, no party can bear the result. We oppose the provocation and escalation of tensions of self-interest, and eschew the practice of shifting trouble onto neighbors and seeking gain at the expense of others. Media can play a very important role in promoting peace on the peninsula and in the world. In China, we say journalists are construction workers in people's mind. We report the world, and we also shape people's perception of the world. We quote public opinion, and we are also public opinion leaders. We journalists can do our bit to call for peace and to generate positive energy for the just cause of the humankind. Media must be rational and balanced in order to seek truth. We shall not try to be sensational for commercial benefits or other agenda. Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism recently published a report on the global news industry, highlighting the increasing power of new communication channels as traditional media continues to lose both influence and money. The report says that 70% of the media business leaders it surveyed said they worried over the distribution of fake news in social networks, which will strengthen their position. Post-truth, the Oxford Dictionary's word of the year, reflects a world where objective facts have become less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion. This is especially problematic when it comes to covering major political and international issues. I think that in the era of post-truth, journalists bear tremendous social responsibilities to improve the quality of journalism and promote the value of journalism in fighting against fake and inaccurate news. It is our task to let truth prevail over rumors and make rationality transcend emotion. Dear colleagues and friends, peace, like air and sunshine, is hardly noticed when people enjoy them, but none of us can live without it. China and South Korea are important trade partners. China and South Korea free trade agreement took effect in 2015. The Northeast Asia is a region regarded as one of the most important engines of the world economy. Countries in this region can play a bigger role in bringing benefits to the whole world, but now we are facing a big question mark. American newspaperman Joseph Pulitzer said that a journalist is the lookout on the bridge of the ship of state. He knows the passing sail, the little things of interest that dot the horizon in fine weather. He reports the drifting castaway whom the ship can save. He peers through fog and storm to give warnings of dangers ahead. He's not thinking of his wages or of the profits of his owners. He's there to watch over the safety and the welfare of the people who trust him. Let's fulfill our duties as the lookout and contribute to the peace and the prosperity of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang Yong. It's a great presentation. Especially, I think and there are some people who do not know the THAAD issue. THAAD means Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, but this issue is a sensitive issue between Korea and China, between China and United States, and I will give you time to discuss later. Okay, let me turn to Ms. Lin Walsui. Okay, stage is yours.
Thank you. So it's difficult to define world peace because we never really have experienced it in modern times. Unfortunately, there is usually conflict in the world. From an American's perspective, world peace is likely tied to freedom. Freedom means different things to different people in different countries around the world. The American idea of freedom, at its core, is that people, the public, remain sovereign through the ability to vote and elect their officials. Beyond the right to vote and voice opinions, though, the other crucial piece of that equation is that the public needs to be informed. In the US, as school children, the link between being informed and freedom is ingrained in us during many lessons about our country's history of slavery. An example, as explained by Frederick Douglass, the statesman who was born a slave, the path to freedom was in his ability to read and write. We also see this echoed around the world in dictatorships, which keep strict control over national media and then in turn information. If people are informed, especially about their elected officials, the people in power, they are then able to hold them accountable and remain sovereign. From an American perspective, the path to freedom and world peace is through a public informed by a free press. So the goal should be to unshackle the press around the world and allow for information to be freely obtained and freely produced. If we arm the citizens of the world with accurate information, they can make good decisions. Hopefully those decisions include respecting each other and choosing peace. So the question is, what's a journalist's responsibility and what's their role in that? When you look at, or when I look at and consider what my role as a journalist is, I break it into 3 different categories. To inform, that's probably the top and foremost. To expose, and to provide a voice to the voiceless. When I talk about exposing, especially my job as an investigative journalist, I want to shed light on wrongdoings, whether that's government, whether that's a business, whether that's a company. I'm providing information to the public so they can make decisions about the future of these individuals, governments, and political parties. I'm supplying factual information that can help rid communities of misinformation, which can lead to misperceptions and also rid it of propaganda. Exposing also means holding the powerful accountable. Providing information could lead to those responsible for wrongdoings being removed from power if you're able to hold the powerful accountable and have a free press. It also means providing information that could prevent more wrongdoing from occurring or even help restore peace, order, and stability. Providing a voice to the voiceless. We're allowing those not in power to share feelings, experiences, and stories. Sometimes coming to the media, coming to a journalist to share their story is the only chance some of these individuals have because they've been blocked everywhere else when they've gone to the government or they've gone to their employers. We want to continue as journalists and as news organizations to be an outlet for more access to diverse opinions because more diversity ultimately can lead to more understanding. So the other one, though, is to inform, and I think that is the first and foremost important thing that a journalist can do. Information is power, as my colleague who just spoke mentioned. During times of conflict, information that is credible, accurate, and fair is more important than ever. A lack of that information during any stage of conflict or war is problematic because it can lead to misinformation, desperateness, chaos, manipulation, and also misrepresentation. So journalists, our role is to always strive to provide information to the public that is ethical, responsible, and accurate in every way possible. The Society of Professional Journalists, we have a code of ethics that's a very widely used code across the US, but also internationally. The code is broken down into 4 main tenets: seek truth and report it, minimize harm, act independently, and then be accountable and transparent. We believe that as journalists, if we adhere to this code, we will be able to produce information, produce stories that are public, wherever that may be, locally, regionally, nationwide, or around the world, can then take that information and make informed decisions, whether that's at the grocery store or that's when they're voting during an election. With credible information, they're making these informed decisions that impact their lives. In times of conflict, this information is invaluable, but also in times of peace, this information is invaluable so that we don't find ourselves in a time of conflict because of maybe misinformation. So that's why it's important for journalists to provide this accurate information during these times more than ever. Now, the role when we are looking at peace for different countries and around the world, it's important both for local journalists that are there in those countries and those areas, but it's also important for the international media. From a local journalist standpoint, they have the ability to really add context. They can talk to those in the community and really get the feeling of what they want, what they're seeing. They're the people on the ground that know better than anyone else about what's going on. They know the key players involved, those in power, those that aren't, those that want to be in power. They have the access. More importantly, also, they can add a historical perspective. Is this something we should be worried about? Has this happened before? Has this party maybe tried to disrupt the peace before? So that's also very important. Internationally, or international media, when covering something that is not theirs, they're happening there locally, they can attract worldwide attention to some of these issues when maybe the press in those countries is being thwarted and not allowed to share the information. We can also allow for unbiased and free global important information. So I think our goal as journalists should be to, one, in our own reporting, be ethical, seek truth and report it, minimize harm, act independently, be accountable and transparent. But then from a wider perspective, encourage all journalists, help all journalists to get information out there that is accurate and true. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Warsi. Let me turn to Mr. Dr. Hong.
Good afternoon. I'm Dong-Yul Hong. the president of Daegu University and Daegu Cyber University. I'd like to thank Journalists Association of Korea for inviting me to this important event. I'd also like to extend my hearty welcome to Korea to journalists from all over the world. Chapter 1, some major dangers facing humans. Today, humans are surrounded by serious dangers. These differ from the risks we have experienced in the past in terms of size and content. For example, today's dangers do not depend on whether a country is developed or developing, nor do they depend on the area and the place. Even within a country, neither the rich nor the poor are safe from them. Dangers are everywhere and they can happen to anyone. Everyone is living in an unsafe world. There are several important factors that threaten human life, safety, and world peace. The most serious thing is terrorism. The terrorist hijacking attacks on September 11th, 2001 in New York is a typical example. 2,977 innocent civilians were killed and 6,291 injured. In recent years, terrorism by IS has horrified the world. According to the 2015 National Terrorism Report submitted to Congress by the United States Department of State, on June 2nd, 2016, there were 28,328 victims of terrorism worldwide in just 1 year in 2015. On the morning of March 22nd, 2016, a series of bombings took place in Brussels, Belgium. Including 2 suicide bombers, 34 people were killed and 250 injured. Also, in May and June 2016, several hundred people were killed by IS terrorist attacks in Syria, Yemen, and Baghdad, the capital of Iraq. On July 14, 2016, on the anniversary of the French Revolution, terrorism occurred in Nice, France. There were around 180 civilian casualties who were gathered at the festival venue. This year, terrorism continues. On February 13, 2017, at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia, there was a case in which Kim Jong-un's half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, was assassinated in the middle of the day in a terrorist attack. Also, in March, terrorist attacks in a military hospital in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, at a wedding in Iraq. And in Damascus, the capital of Syria, killed and injured several hundred people, including children. In short, we live in a world where terrorism is an everyday occurrence, so terrorist attacks are unpredictable and anyone can be the victim. The second risk is the threat of war. In 2003, the United States launched a massive attack on Iraq in response to terrorism. Since 2003, the number of people who died from war and terrorism in Iraq has not been accurately counted, but it is known to reach over 100,000. In fact, the Korean Peninsula is still unable to escape from the fear of everyday war. In particular, the North Korean nuclear threat not only raises the danger of war between the two Koreas, but also raises tensions between North Korea and the United States, and furthermore, between China and the United States, as well as threatens peace in Asia. The third risk is civil war. Over the past 6 years, the Syrian civil war has killed 310,000 people, including over 10,000 children, and the number of domestic and international refugees has surpassed more than 11.2 million. On October 7th, 2016, the Nobel Committee awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to President Santos of Colombia, who led the peace treaty with rebels, bringing an end to a 52-year civil war that had been raging since 1964. What I would like to highlight here is that 52 years of civil war in Colombia has killed 220,000 people, displaced 8 million people from their homes, and left approximately 45,000 people missing. Meanwhile, on the same day, at least 155 people were killed, and a Yemeni rebel funeral service was raided. On October 5th, 2016, the United Nations announced that approximately 11,000 casualties and more than 3 million refugees had been recorded in the Yemen civil war, and that 370,000 children were facing the risk of malnutrition and starvation. Fourth, humans are concerned about risks other than terrorism, war, and civil war, namely natural disasters and ecological risks. Natural disasters are nothing new, but today they are not just natural disasters. A major example was in March 11, 2011, when an earthquake and tsunami occurred in the Tohoku region of Japan, resulted in a disaster at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Due to the earthquake and tsunami, nearly 20,000 people were killed or lost, but hundreds more have died as a result of nuclear accidents, and radiation exposure has caused cancer patients and additional casualties. Climate change and various other related issues are also embarrassing. Abnormal climate and unusual weather changes are frequently reported throughout the world. Environmental scientists warn that such climate change and ecosystem changes will ultimately threaten world peace and even humankind's survival. Chapter 2. The highest values of the 21st century: peace, safety, and sustainability. Humanity now places the highest value on peace, safety, and sustainability. Safety and peace from war, terrorism, and civil war, safety from social conflicts and disputes, and safety from ecological crises and environmental pollution have become very important personal and social concerns. It is the highest value of the present generation to protect the safety and life of society, the peace of humankind, and the sustainability of the earth from various dangers. Various and sincere efforts and practices of various social actors are required for a peaceful society, a safe society, and a sustainable society. In particular, the role of education and media, together with governments, NGOs, and religious organizations, is very important. In addition, peace and security have become a common goal of the international community. It has become a global task that can be solved only through the joint effort of the international community and the citizens of the world. In addition to the efforts of international organizations such as the United Nations, government officials and non-governmental organizations should also meet frequently to communicate on the theme of international dispute resolution and the safety of the international community. In particular, we must actively support exchanges and communication among youth, the future generation. Chapter 3, the role of journalists and media in world peace. In that regard, the role of journalists and media cannot be emphasized enough. First, I believe journalists and media should consider world peace as well as human security and life more important than any other values. These values override any interest of individuals, institutions, or nations, and any other values. When peace and anti-peace are confronted, and when life and anti-life are encountered, we should not stand aside for reasons of mechanical neutrality. Sometimes we experience the structural limitations of media that are subordinated to immoral power in capital, that have an interest in conflict rather than peace. Other times, we witness instances where activities and practices to keep peace are dangerous enough to take the threat of identity and life. Nonetheless, journalists and media should be able to act positively with world peace as well as human security and life as their highest values. Second, the role of the journalist group is especially important. Most of all, various efforts should be made to ensure the safety of journalists at reporting sites. Due to the attack against the French weekly magazine Charlie Hebdo on January 7, 2015, 10 journalists were killed, and it is representative of the terrorist attacks toward media that have occurred recently. Terrorism and attacks against journalists and media agencies must be tackled not only by journalists from around the world, but also by governments, business, NGOs, and educational institutions around the world who have faith in democracy. Third, the journalist group must provide a place for mutual information exchanges and solidarity between journalists. It is especially important to expand the scale of exchanges and solidarity on a global scale. As the risks of terrorism, wars, and ecological destruction expand on a global scale, responses to peace and security must also be expanded on a global scale. The journalist group should play a role in ensuring that efforts and practices in every corner of the globe are coordinated and banded together. In this sense, it is critical that journalists from around the world meet and join together like this on this theme of global peace. These encounters and joint efforts must be expanded and activated. Fourth, journalists and media should be able to bear educational roles. In particular, the media should be a place of open values and multicultural understanding education that can broaden mutual understanding and pursue coexistence and mutual benefits between different nations, ethnic groups, religions, and cultures. Instead of imperialist education that glorifies and stimulates invasion and domination, and nationalistic education that prioritizes its own culture, we must practice peace and solidarity education that teaches values and attitudes that work together to build mutual prosperity, safety, and a sustainable earth while understanding each other. By doing so, we will be able to transform the members of society into enlightened citizens for peace who seek coexistence and mutual benefits. It is, in fact, the only measure to protect the peace of the world, the sustainability of humankind, and the safety of oneself and one's children. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, President Hong. You are a professor. It was a very insightful presentation, especially he explained many examples of terrorism in detail. It's very impressive. Okay, last speaker, Mr. Woo Seok Choi.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ken Choi. I'm a deputy editor of Chosun Daily Newspaper, and I'm also a vice president of Journalists Association of Korea. Great to have you all here. Thank you for coming to Korea. Salam alaikum. Terima kasih. Thank you very much. Arigato gozaimasu. And sheshe, and so on and so on. So how many of you... Dr. Hong was very academic. I'm not. I'm just a journalist. I've been a journalist for the past quarter century, so I'm just going to tell you, very easily. How many of you been to Korea for the first time? Wow, wow. Enjoy. It's a perfect weather. We have some dust problems stemming, where the dust comes from. The wind blows from China to Korea, so we have some dust problems. But otherwise, it's all right. It's springtime, best season in Korea, and I think there are a lot of things to look around. But because I believe all of you are journalists, right? Some of you are pretty sleepy. I think who's from Argentina? Somebody who traveled 36 hours, the opposite side of the world. So I really welcome you. And somebody from Canada. US, it's the other, like 12 hours difference, so you guys all have heavy jet lag, but please bear with me. I can be as short as I can if you want. I can go on if you all want. I just wanted to, the job that I was given today is talk about the media's role about reporting the international issues. And I just put you up this New York Times newspaper, the front page, but not the fact that man walk on the moon, but just look at the left upside corner. It says, all news that's fit to print. I think it means a lot. That means, journalists, I always believe we are like sand. Meaning, if you throw a sand at somebody on your own, sometimes it's not much. But if all journalists get together, create a sandbag, and you throw it at somebody, it can cause some damage. And that's the power we have. If we scatter around, we are nobody. But if you get united on one cause, which is, the fact that while we are journalists, free press, the right to write whatever we want, I think, this philosophy is what unites us. And if we get together on certain things, I think we can get a lot of things changed. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you think our job is? What is journalist? What is our job? I just wrote this down, reporting facts. Yeah, that's our job. Is this the most important thing? Maybe, maybe not. Stand up against the powerful ones, as Lynn Walsh just mentioned about. Is this our job? Just to make sure, whatever they're doing? Maybe, maybe not. I'm just throwing you this out. Check the government, being the watchdogs, yes. Shape public opinion, yes. Help the underdog, maybe. Find good stories, yes. And distribute news, all the more. But, today I'm not going to I think if I talk about all these things, it will be 1 year full of journalism class in a university. So today I'm just going to tell you something I believe the most basic fundamental thing what we do. And I really believe that's reporting facts. Reporting facts is what we do. And then, yes, by reporting facts, you may shape the public opinion, you may stand up against the government, you may, help the underdog or find good stories and so on. But, the one fundamental thing is we have to report facts. And, reporting facts, no matter what, Actually, the first, do you know, does anybody know the first newspaper in the world? Anybody know the first newspaper published in the world? Any idea? It's a trivia question. No? Okay, the first newspaper in the world was published in 1609 in Germany. Somebody named Johann Carlos. It was the first newspaper. Does anybody know the existing running oldest newspaper in the world? Okay, another trivia. Probably doesn't mean much. The oldest running newspaper in the world is Wiener Zeitung. It's in Austria. Started running since 1703. So it's like, really 300 something years ago. And then, over the years, the print newspaper and then went into magazines, and then, the digital age comes. So, Lloyd newspaper, it's quite interesting. I mean, important newspaper, news publication in England actually went into digital in 2013. Financial news, Forbes, whatever. So we have all sorts of all these newspaper coming, and because of the digitalization, so as you know, we have the mobile phone, KakaoTalk, WeChat, WhatsApp. The platform is changing, but our job as reporting facts has not. It's still the same, whether we are living in a digital age or in 1609 or 1703, whatever it is, our job as a journalist is still reporting facts. And a lot of things nowadays, actually, especially in Korea, the mostly wired nation in the world, has some side effects. The KakaoTalk is the most popular messenger service in Korea, carrying I think more than 100 million people all over the world. And sometimes one person has two accounts and so on. So it's about 100 million. And every day I'm receiving all these sort of information. God knows who wrote it, but some of these things about Samsung, some of these things about some politicians, having an affair, blah blah blah. Somebody is doing something here wrong or something right. Totally unsubstantiated, but sounds quite plausible and gets my attention. So a lot of these things, and it's not just me, but all the Korean, somebody who's in 40s, 50s, whatever, they all reading these. And nowadays we have Google, Facebook, Twitter. Twitter is becoming actually researched after last year's U.S. presidential campaign. President Trump is using this quite often, and it's causing a lot of uproar. So my analysis of today's media world is that everybody knows everything, what's going on. It's not all, in the old days, those people who does not know how to read probably don't really read newspapers, then they're sort of left out of the news cycle. Nowadays, it's not just WhatsApp or digital things, but a lot. YouTube's actually delivering information and so on. So most of the people around the world knows everything what's going on quite well. And the big problem nowadays, because of this, ironically, this digitalization sort of spread the news, expanded the news platform, but at the same time, it's causing this fake news issues. As I said earlier, some of these things just rampantly spread around, unsubstantiated, not knowing where the heck comes from. And sometimes sounds very plausible, but if you actually dig in, a lot of things, most of the time, they are not really true, and they are sort of manipulated news and stuff like that. So it's a big dilemma for us. And another thing, and Dr. Hong mentioned about war and terrorism. And my personal experience, I was a Bosnian war correspondent in 1996. And I think somebody's from Bosnia here, and I saw the war atrocity in Sarajevo. It appalled me. And what I learned at the time was all truth goes out the window if there's a war. And both sides, they all talk about their own stories. They try to get their propaganda across to the other people. So it's really hard and difficult to substantiate as a journalist. And this fake news now is becoming a worldwide pandemic. This year, Davos Forum in Switzerland, they had extensive discussion about this fake news issues. What shall we do about it? And to tell the truth, there is no magic bullet or panacea to fix all these things. There was a U.S. election last year, and President Trump said a lot of things, and a lot of things he said were not true. So I don't know, and still got elected, which really amazed a lot of people in the U.S. And Korea is going to have an election next month. And right now, a lot of things are also going around and making our voters confusing about their candidates. So, this is a rather new phenomenon, maybe over the past 5 or 10 years, that a lot of newspaper companies and a lot of news media organizations in the world is actually running a fact-check team. So Washington Post, a guy named Glenn Kessler, he's a quite famous foreign policy correspondent, and now he's heading fact-check team in Washington Post, and he said whatever they do in the whole day, according to him, it's probably like 80% of whatever they checked are not true, which is quite ridiculous. And this little thing, New York Times fact checks Trump, all true. This is also a fake. It's a fake image. So this fake news is rampant. It's going all over the place, and we don't really have a magic bullet to fix it. And this is maybe a lame response, but I think the fake news issue, if we have a free press, we can fix this. And free press, a lot of people don't really sort of gauge the meaning of free press. Free press, I'm not in a position to actually lecture you on this, but I'm just gonna let you know what I feel. Free press, it's a philosophy that has to be embedded into the society. And the reason why I strongly believe free press is really important for the development of the society is because if there is I think Lynn also mentioned about diversity. The more diverse you are, the more ideas you can countercheck, and competing ideas can survive. And as a result, it will probably lead the society into a better direction. So when there's a fake news, and if you have a free press, you can always check the facts, and you can always publish these erroneous things, and then thereby correct all these fake news issues. And I think the strength of U.S. media, and probably some other developed nations as well, is that there are rampant fake news in the U.S., but at the same time, there's vibrant, the other counter part in the U.S. media that's vibrant to fix all these fake news. So I think the U.S. relatively, a lot of my colleagues in the U.S. worries about these fake news issues, but I think the U.S. will probably overcome this issue rather quickly. And I want to share our experience. In 2008, Korea went through this fake news issue. There was this mad cow disease thing in Korea, and this little thing over here, it's a candlelit vigil, and it actually, there were about 1 million people showed up to the streets demonstrating against government's policy on importing U.S. beef and so on. And they all believe that if you eat U.S. beef, you will have these holes in your head, brain, whatever, and you will die the next year or so. And it was a rampant. This demonstration triggered by this. It was proved later on that it was all not true, and people got upset about this. And then people came out to the street and they demonstrated. But eventually, it was proven. Actually, this is the data in 2015. 2014, from 1996 to 2014, maybe 229 people died over the world. So it's relatively much less than what people who, demonstrated at that time. They said that if you eat one bite of U.S. hamburger, you will die the next year or something like that, which was not true. And another case I wanted to show you is the president of Korea was impeached about 20 days ago. Now she's in jail. It's a bit shameful for our part to mention, but still, there was this pro-park demonstration and there was an anti-park demonstration. Again, about 1 million people showed up on the street on one side as a candlelit vision, demanding President Park to resign. The other side, they call it the Korean flag demonstrators. They believe President Park didn't receive any money, so she does not need to step down, so stay in power, blah, blah. So they really fought against, ideally, they demonstrated against each other, but there was not a single violence. And I just wanted to tell you why weren't there any violence. Just guess why there weren't any violence. And I strongly believe that's because it's not just the press like us, but because nowadays everybody is a journalist. Everybody's carrying a cell phone. And if there's a violence, somebody right next to you will just, record this violent issue, violence that goes on. So each side knew that any violence perpetrated by either side will doom to lose. So each side had strict requests to their demonstrators, do not make any violent, gestures, or do not cause any violence because you will ruin their purpose. So, and I think this is, again, it's the free press issue. Everybody's, free to publish whatever they want. And if that the publication has a just cause, then people will jump on it. And because of that, I think this free press issue is actually really the reason why there was no violence in the past, 6 months in Korea. And now let me just go to this, being an international reporter, journalist who writes about international stories, global issues. Sometimes you all probably had experiences about writing stories about other countries. So there's a historical fact. So Second World War, Korean War in 1950, the China-Vietnamese War in 1979. It's a historical fact. There's nothing to dispute about. They had a war, so we reported about it. And then, but still, history is disputed. Nanjing massacre, in China, 300,000 people died. Japanese do not agree with it. Comfort woman issues, a lot of Koreans and Chinese and Dutch and Indonesians, they were abducted or they were taken into military camp to serve, Japanese military personnel as a prostitute or whatever. But still, this is a very subject to questioning issues. And then there are other issues, the global norm issues. So human rights is universal concept. And when we report about human rights issues, about North Korea or Tibet or Hong Kong or Uzbekistan, whatever it is, still human rights is still in dispute. Kim Jong-nam, as Dr. Hong said, was assassinated last month, in February in Malaysia. And a lot of people see this in a different way, how to report about it. So our job is basically try to write things, the facts, whatever is happening, and people with opinion to it. But we try to hold our opinion about these issues. And reporting on today's issues is also causing a lot of jitters. So sometimes, my perspective is right, or your perspective is wrong. Or on thought issues, as Mr. Jang Yong said, China's thought is right, and our thought is wrong. God knows who's right. And on South China Sea, there's Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam is against China. Our views is right, yours is wrong. So there's always, and actually, even though we are journalists, I'm still a Korean, you're still Chinese or Japanese or Vietnamese. So you tend to write within your own boundaries about, what's going on. So it's still a very questionable thing. I don't know whether this, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I'm just trying to throw you questions to think about. And what we write today about certain issues may cause or, may irritate some other people, but are we writing the facts? That's the thing I wanted to throw to you. And on North Korea, I've been writing about North Korea, and I've been to North Korea once on Kumgang Mountain. That was the only time I actually went in and had some contacts with North Koreans. But still, most journalists do not have any access. They report about North Korea on rumors. Some of them actually go to the border with China and try to meet some North Koreans and ask them what's going on inside North Korea. All secondary information. So we have, as a journalist from South Korea, we are wondering how to make this thing better. And to tell the truth, I don't have any answer to this. And THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. The Chinese government is very upset about this. North Koreans don't like it. What I want to throw, I'm not saying THAAD is the only way to defend against North Korean missiles and so on. I'm just throwing to you this because Russia runs some sort of a THAAD in the region. Japan does run these THAAD issues in the region as well. And the Chinese are picking on us. This is the general sentiment in Korea. And why? Because Lotte shops, like 29 Lotte shops, Lotte is a Korean company running big, these markets, supermarkets and so on, and they're being shut down because of these Chinese are they're not saying officially that this is because of THAAD, but because, these Lotte shops violated the local rules. And then Chinese tourists all of a sudden stopped coming to Korea. None of them say anything about why they're not coming, but we all know why they're not coming. And so the streets, it's getting much easier to get into because there are not many people. Is this the right reaction from China? South Koreans, they're not saying it. Our media is not reporting much about it. But we are just looking, we are just reporting facts that the Chinese tourists suddenly dropped 90%. Because of the drop in Chinese tourists, we have income of some of the shops halved by 30% or whatever. So all these things are going on. But still, no matter what, between the two countries, recently there was this Seoul ferry which sunk about 3 years ago in southwestern part of Korea. And that Seoul ferry was brought up to the surface by a Chinese company. So we still have engagements with Chinese. The picture on the right is the remains of Chinese soldiers who died in the Korean Peninsula during the Korean War in 1950. We still dig up, and then we ask the Chinese government to pick up your remains, would you? And they gladly did so. And that's the only way we sort of pay respect to the dead soldiers. So, things like this are still going on. And just because of these, political issue, the relationship cannot be just stopped right away. And there's a saying in Korea that when there is this two whales, like the U.S. and the Chinese are fighting, the two whales are fighting, then the small shrimp gets his butt kicked, and we are the shrimp, and we feel pretty sorry about this, and we are telling the Chinese, on a sort of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs official go over to China and say, hey, why are you guys kicking our butt? Please be easy on us. So that's the official line. Nobody's saying anything officially because if somebody say anything negative or positive on Chinese or US or whatever, it becomes a national thing, and it's not gonna solve any problem. So my advice to anybody as a journalist, nowadays, because we are journalists and we are the people to carry out the soft power issue. Soft power, what does the soft power means? Hard power is military power or national power and so on. Soft power is to win the hearts and minds of the people. And so we are journalists. What we can do is we can report about Chinese tourists in China, in Korea. Sometimes some of these Chinese tourists who come to Korea and lose their handbags or lose their wallets and so on, they find it immediately. The police go after where it's dropped, and then they look through the CCTV and find the Chinese tourist and give it back to them. So this sort of thing is so mending these uncomfortable issues. And my conclusion today is, as a journalist, and I tell my junior reporters as well, that when we report about other country, when we report about us, we can, maybe you can be harsh on our Korean politicians or Korean government officials and so on. But when you report about foreign nations, report facts only. Do not get your emotion in there. So, okay, the Chinese are shutting down Lotte shops, 29 Lotte shops in China. And actually 29,000 Chinese lost their jobs. So what we do, we just report facts. To 29,000 Chinese lost their jobs, blah, blah, blah. But we don't say, oh, these dumb authorities are doing dumb, stupid things, blah, blah. If we write things like this, then it will only irritate the other party. It's not going to solve any issue. So my advice to my junior reporters, I'm not giving you advice at all because you guys are all esteemed journalists. I'm just giving you what I did to my junior reporters is that do not get all the emotions out, report only facts. And sometimes some of our journalists report about President Trump pretty dumb things because sometimes you write some stupid things, yes, but still we don't write in our newspaper that Donald Trump, he said stupid things, blah, blah, blah. He just said things that is factually erroneous. That's how we report. So I think, my conclusion is, even though nations may go to war, or may fight, or may quarrel, whatever, but we journalists, if you go to the war zone, yes, the truth goes out the door, but still, our obligation is to write facts. And then the rest comes. So this is my conclusion, and I will have discussion later on. Thank you very much.
Give a big hand to him. Yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting PowerPoint and interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Well, we are going to discuss, despite of another panelist absence. Okay, we have listened for distinguished panelists' presentation. We have covered a wide range of issues that the role of media for world peace and the prevention of terrorism, North Korea's nuclear issues, and countermeasures against the fake news, providing accurate information and so on. Especially nowadays in the internet age, I think the role of media has become really important. I hope today's discussion will help us to recognize the role of the media again. Now, at this point, before I open the floor, I will ask panelists one by one for the more understanding. Maybe I can start, Mr. Chang Yong. You pointed out 4 problems with the THAAD, but there are concerns about China's retaliation against Korea. But today's conference is not a diplomatic stage, but a discussion about the role of the general press. In the sense, I will ask you a question. As you know, Korean politics is in transition because of President's impeachment, and in this week, the summit is scheduled between the United States and China. And recently, the possibility of North Korea's nuclear test has been raised again. So, have you thought about how can we solve the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula?
Thank you, Mr. Park. Thank you for giving me such a good question. I think the question is so good. If I have the opportunity, I will ask Mr. Trump. do you have any solution for the North Korea nuclear program? And I also think this question, maybe Mr. Trump doesn't have an answer. This morning I was reading the Financial Times on my smartphone. I came across a story about Mr. Trump. And he was interviewed by the FT, and he told the FT that if China is not going to solve North Korea, we will. I was wondering, in what way? How can Mr. Trump or the United States solve North Korea? Probably on his mind is a war or military strike. If he was thinking so, I would, remind him of the situation in Afghanistan, in Middle East, in Iraq. I don't think war is an option. During the lunch, I had a conversation with the Vice Minister of the Foreign Ministry of Korea, and we also talked about this issue. And I was asking him, how to solve this problem. And the Vice Minister said, China has the key. I asked him, do you really think so? Do you really think that North Korea listens to China? He says, China has the leverage. Okay. Well, I've noticed a very interesting phenomenon, not only in the States and even here, It is very easy to blame China. If the world has an economic problem, have an environmental problem, okay, just go blame China. It's very interesting. But with respect to the North Korea nuclear program, the issue here, first of all, I want to say it's not an issue of China. Fundamentally, it's an issue it's an issue of the peninsula. It's an issue between the North and the South. Of course, China is against, proliferation of nuclear weapons. So we are involved in this issue. I think China has done, something to stop the North Korea nuclear program. And we need work together with the US and the South Korea. I think we have missed a lot of, good opportunities, in the early years of, back to 10 years ago or a decade ago, we have opportunities to stop the North Korea nuclear program. At that time, the North Korea promised to dismantle their nuclear facility in condition of, US provide security guarantee for this country. But, unfortunately, the six-party talks was suspended. But still, I think, there's still hope, and peace is not dead. One thing I want to say is when the US and the South Korea, when both the US and South Korea has sunshine policies, the north side will be, controlled effectively. The problem is, both the US and South Korea are very tough toward the North Korea. And they are developing their nuclear program as a tool, as a leverage to fight back. I think we need a compromise. I think we need dialogue. That's my solution. I don't have a solution, but that's the only way to achieve lasting peace and security. Thank you.
So I have further question to, how do you think about the resuming six-party talks? China is as a chair country.
Chair country?
Yeah.
I think China has played the role as a moderator. And
It's not chair.
not chair. I'm not sure. Let's wait and see. President Xi Jinping is going to meet Mr. Trump, President Trump, very soon, and probably they are going to talk about the peninsula issue. And let's wait and see what kind of outcome we will have. We acknowledge this is a very pressing issue, and we need to solve this problem in a prompt manner. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Now let me move on to Ms. Walsey. As an integrative journalist, you stress the responsibility of journalists. Especially, you said that it's important to expose, for example, first shedding light on wrongdoings, and second, holding the powerful accountable. But it's not an easy task to a journalist. But I think it's always a matter to try. What if there is a way to find accurate information and fact-checking? How do you think about it?
So I think the best way to find that accurate information, to do that, no matter where you are, is one, to talk to those that are involved, directly asking the questions. Also there's a push as journalists that we need to, in most countries there are what would be the equivalent in the U.S. Freedom of Information Act, so FOIA, Public Records Act, where you have access to certain documents. So what we're seeing in the U.S. a lot now lately is, and especially at the federal level, talking to federal employees or government employees is becoming more and more difficult. So we have to go through a PR office, and I don't know, you guys may or may not be experiencing this as well. And you can't even talk to maybe the doctor or the scientist that was working on a certain project. So you then are stuck with sending questions to a public information officer or to a spokesperson. It gets relayed to the individual who might be the expert, but there's a time delay. You don't get to speak directly to the individuals involved. So we see that as a big problem in the U.S., and it's something that the Society of Professional Journalists is fighting against. But a way to get around that, I always say that there is a way to get around that, is by using the public access laws that exist. And what's important there is that we as journalists, and both regionally, nationally, but also around the whole world, are working together to help one another gain that access. In some countries, that access is better than others. And if we are in a country where our access is better than another country and they need help, I think we should, as journalists, step up to help make that happen. And by working together to put the pressure on governments to get better access to get that information. I do think there always is a way. I think it is key, though, to get direct information and try not to rely on reporting on rumors, as was mentioned before, when you don't have that access, trying to get second and third verification wherever possible, and independently verifying information.
Yeah. Further question. Could you explain the role of the Society of Professional Journalists in the United States?
Yes. So the Society of Professional Journalists is the oldest journalism organization in the U.S. We are also one of the largest. We have representation from journalists that are in print, broadcast, online. We also have members that are non-journalists, that are attorneys. They also are just members of the public. So we did recently open up our membership to members of the public so they can be supporters of the society. And basically the pitch there is that they are supporting journalism and they are supporting access, because in the U.S., yes, we have a freedom of the press, but when it comes to government information from the government, that information belongs to the public. So we really feel that we need to get the public involved and have them want to fight for that access because it belongs to them, and also educate them on how important it is. So that's one thing that the SPJ does. The other main things that we do is if a journalist finds themselves in trouble for any reason, let's say they find themselves arrested because they might be standing on a sidewalk and they're shooting video, and they're allowed to be, but for some reason they were arrested and the law enforcement agent did not maybe understand. SPJ would come to their assistance, whether that's in funding or it's with kind of creating public outrage over it through media, blogging, social media. We also do defend journalists who are trying to obtain information. So in a FOIA lawsuit or a public records lawsuit, we will try to defend them or find attorneys to get them in touch with. And then third, we do have our code of ethics, which I mentioned during when I spoke earlier, and it is one of the most widely used codes when journalists in the United States learn how to be a journalist, what it means to be a journalist.
Okay, thank you. I will ask President Hong a question. You emphasize the role of journalists and media for world peace, especially the role of journalist group and solidarity of journalists. I think this conference is one of the efforts to expand global journalism. What do you think about the support of international organizations and governments of each country for journalist group?
May I answer your question in Korean?
Please speak up the interpretation.
I'm sorry. 네, 먼저 국제기구나 각국 정부들이 기자들에 대해서 여러 가지 지원할 수 있는 영역이 있다고 생각하는데 무엇보다도 기자들이 제 역할을 제대로 수행하는 것은 각국의 민주주의나 인권 혹은 오늘 주제가 되고 있는 세계 평화를 위해서 대단히 중요하다라고 하는 사실에 대한 어떤 그 기본적인 인식 그리고 철학에서 시작해야 된다고 생각합니다. 최근에 우리 한국 얘기긴 합니다만은 한국의 대통령이 탄핵당하는 불행한 사태에 대해서 도 사실은 한국 언론의 그동안의 역할과 책임이 적지 않다 이런 생각을 저는 개인적으로 갖고 있습니다. 말하자면 언론이라도 제대로 정부와 권력에 대한 비판적 역할, 감시자로서의 역할을 제대로 수행했다면 이런 사태까지 오지 않았을 수도 있다라는 생각을 피할 수가 없는 거죠. 그런 점에서 언론이 평상시에 제대로 역할을 하는 것은 한 나라의 민주주의와 사회 안전, 평화를 위해서 대단히 중요하다는 생각을 피할 수가 없고요. 그런 의미에서 국제기구나 유엔과 같은 국제기구나 혹은 각국 정부들이 언론이 제 역할을 수행할 수 있도록 여러 가지 방면에서 돕고 지원하는 것은 궁극적으로 그 나라의 민주주의와 세계 평화를 위해서 대단히 중요하다는 결론이고요. 한두 가지 말씀만 더 드리면 가장 중요한 것은 역시 앞에서 말씀드렸습니다마는 기자들이 혹은 언론이 위험을 느끼지 않고 취재 활동을 자유롭게 할 수 있도록 보장하는 것이야말로 가장 중요한 첫째다 이렇게 생각을 합니다. 기자와 취재 활동에 대한 공격 혹은 테러 예컨대 이런 것들은 인류에 대한 공격 혹은 인류가 지금 수천 년 동안 지금까지 오면서 지켜온 보편 가치에 대한 공격 혹은 테러로 인식하는 것이 중요하고 그런 점에서 기자와 언론에 대한 공격과 테러는 국제기구나 정부가 가장 기본적으로 막고 보호해야 될 책임이 있다 이렇게 생각을 하고요. 두 번째 하나만 더 말씀드리면 기자들이 공유 혹은 공감하는 가치들 오늘 이야기하고 있는 세계 평화 혹은 인권 혹은 민주주의 등등이 될 수 있겠습니다만은 이런 그 보편적 가치들을 인류 사회의 아젠다로 혹은 지구촌 사회의 아젠다로 각 국제기구나 각국의 정부 혹은 뭐 그 외의 NGO 혹은 각 단체들이 그렇게 논의되고 확산될 수 있도록 하는 노력과 접근이 중요하지 않겠나 이렇게 생각을 합니다. 네.
Okay, thank you. Now I will ask Mr. Choi a question. You explained the role of the media in detail, especially you explained the problem of fake news and the importance of accurate reporting. Nowadays, in the internet world, fake news is an obstacle to world peace, I think. Do you have any plans for solving the problem of fake news? And second, and you mentioned the third issue that Korea and China are in conflicts. What do you think about the role of the two countries' press in solving the problem? That's my question.
Well, always tough questions. Actually, I'm not a government policymaker, so I really don't like to tell you, as a government official. I'm just telling my opinion about the fake news issues. Yes, actually, we had some experiences. I think sometime late 1800s, San Francisco Chronicle, something like that, reported about the ships in Havana being blown up by renegades, whatever, which caused U.S.-Spanish war. So newspaper can start a war. That was a fake news apparently, or totally unsubstantiated stories. But U.S. public opinion moved to go to war. And most recently, the 9/11, as you know, Saddam Hussein probably didn't have any role in the 9/11 terror, but he got the blame, and then the U.S. the public opinion at the time totally mobilized to strike and go against the war in Iraq, and it is where it is today. So yes, sometimes fake news or some stories that's not substantiated can cause the war or can break the peace. But at the same time, what we should do and what we strive to do. Actually, when I was in Bosnia, December 25th, I think, in 1996, I was the first so-called Western journalist to cross to Sarajevo on ground. Before that, you had to go through the mountains or something like that to sneak into Sarajevo. But during the Bosnian War, the Dayton Accord happened, and all of a sudden, the Serbs sort of lifted their sanction against Sarajevo, and I was actually going through the mountain and then got the news that the sanction was lifted, and I went into Sarajevo. I was the first Western journalist to get in on ground. And a few days I looked around, and then I was led to the stadium in Sarajevo. The winter stadium in Sarajevo was filled with tombs. I heard there were like 100,000 people buried in the stadium because there was no place for the dead to be buried. And when I saw that covered in snow, actually I cried. I really cried. And I couldn't believe that this beautiful Winter Olympic site was turned into a mass grave. And it was horrendous to see these things. And at the time, during the Bosnian-Serbian War, there was a rampant fake news flying all over the place, none of them substantiated. And actually, this escalated the war. It got a lot of people in both sides got mad, and then this hatred sort of against the other, escalated, and the war continued, and more people died, more atrocities took place. So my experience tells me that we journalists have to be responsible. When we write stories, we have to write substantiated stories. We don't write stories based on rumors. Actually, when you come to Korea and write some stories about Korea, you don't ask journalists, to quote. You have to ask government officials. You have to ask some people. That's the basic rule that what we do. And I do the same thing. And the reason why, because you want to substantiate, you want to meet as many people as possible and want to get to the truth. And you know, the freer the press is in your country, the freer people's mindset is, then you tend to have, or you tend to get nearer to the truth. And so for us as a journalist, it's not an easy job. You don't start your work at 9 o'clock and go home at 7 o'clock in the evening. That's not your job. We journalists, you know, it's like you work around the clock. And if there's something not true or something's erroneous in your story, you have to go and fix it. And you never be afraid to face the truth. And sometimes, you know, when you're living in a, I don't know, sometimes, I used to live in a dictatorial state back in, you know, 30 years ago, whatever. Yes, I sometimes am very afraid to go up against the authorities, but if I believe, you know, what I'm writing is the true story, then you have to go and do it. And it's a collective effort, and as Lynn Walsh said, the SPJ would go after you know, those people who are in trouble. Same thing, I belong to International Press Institute, which is a UN-sanctioned entity. It was founded, you know, in 1950, and it's the probably oldest media organization in the world. And we do the same thing. You know, we go to Turkey, we go to, you know, Zimbabwe, we go to anywhere where there's this media problem, try to enforce, or at least try to make the journalist environment safer and better, and so on. So as a member of journalist community, all I have to say, how to get rid of the fake news, you know, it's our job. We have to go out and do it and strive to make sure that things get corrected. On that issue, you know, I think the Chinese media, Korean media, report facts about, you know, what's really the truth. And you know, the Chinese authorities should report about, you know, Lotte issues. They should report about, you know, the THAAD issues as well, how, you know, it's being followed in Korea, what sort of military impact it would have on Chinese securities. I really encourage the Chinese authorities to write about these things because, you know, Korean media, we do write and we actually have access to the US military personnel, and we ask them, you know, the range of all these military equipments, how these radar is being operated. And there was an even test that these radars would be harmful to human, you know, anybody who's near 150 meters or something like that. So there was a rumor like that, and then we substantiated. You found out that that was not the case, that it is not true, and the radar is being shot up in the air, so it's impossible for any humans get in contact with these radars and so on. So the freer the press, we report anything, we fact check, you find the truth, and we report about it. And I think probably there are a lot of informations out there in Korea about these THAAD issues. I encourage the same thing to the Chinese media. They do. If this is so threatful to the Chinese security, then they should really must actually conduct a thorough investigation of, you know, what this THAAD would do to the Chinese security. And I strongly encourage you to do that. And by doing so, then we can sort of compare our notes, and we can compare, okay, your point is valid, then we can actually demand to the US military people that, you know, make sure this THAAD is not really directed to China or something like that, you know, because we have no intention whatsoever to harm anybody's security. We don't have intention to harm the Japanese or not only the Chinese, but we don't have any intention to harm the Russians and so on. So I encourage the Chinese media to dig up, go in there, and do more investigative reporting on these issues, which, you know, please report only on facts, no emotions. And I think we'll probably mend the two nations' conflict on this issue. Thank you very much.
네, okay, thank you. We have to do much to do. Now, I'd like to open the floor for the public discussion Q&A. We have about 20 minutes, so maybe I can entertain 5 or 6 questions. First, I'd like to take 2 or 3 questions first. Please raise your hand and identify yourself and specify panelists.
Okay, good afternoon, all the panelists here. I'm Guan from China Radio International. I'm very glad to be here to participate in this conference. My question would be going to Mr. Choi. In your presentation, first of all, I want to thank you for your warm welcome to all the participants here, because it is my first time to be in Korea, and so far I'm enjoying it very much. But my comment is I wouldn't find I'm in a foreign country, because it only took us like 1 hour and a half flying from Beijing to Seoul, so there's no jet lag. Like other participants. My question is concerning your presentation. You mentioned that for the media to facilitate peace and security in the world, we should report the facts and only the facts. But we all know, as media people, we all know that we are reporting not all the facts. We are reporting the facts we select. So. When you do the selection, emotions are inevitable. No human beings can be called 100% objective in selecting news facts. That's my first question. How will you ensure that your people working in your newspaper guarantee that the facts selection are emotion-free? That's the first question. Maybe too big. My second question is, I noticed a very interesting fact. During your presentation, when you mentioned reporting today's issues, you only mentioned the South China Sea concerning China and its neighboring countries. Because as journalists across the world, we know there are a lot of wars and conflicts taking place in other places. Especially, I was based in Jerusalem between 1999 to 2002, when the conflicts between Palestinians and Israelis were at its highest period. So maybe I think it would be more suitable to include conflicts in the Middle East, because there were wars going on, and in Latin America. And so that's my second question. Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions? Yep. Gentleman in the middle. Please specify panelist.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Malik Suleimana from Ghana. I work with the New Times Corporation. I'm glad to be here, but let me make a general comment. Journalism is the best profession in the world. I say this everywhere I went. The lawyers and the doctors can have their say, but they are entitled to their opinion. Now, the issue about global terrorism, especially the incessant threats coming from North Korea, is very troubling. The role of the media, to me, importantly, is to observe the highest journalistic standard of truthfulness and accuracy. Now, members of the public, to a large extent, some members of the public feel naturally very irritated by the media briefing down their necks and prying their handling of public office. But their irritation pales into insignificance when set against the public good, which the media stands for. Yes, there are times that you may have, journalists being manhandled or face one form of abuse or the other, but it is important that you report the truth and nothing but the truth. Secondly, I think that the permanent members of the Security Council, United States of America, China, Russia, United Kingdom, and France are treating this North and South Korea issue with kid gloves. If the 5 members of the Security Council have dealt with this issue in the manner in which they did in the case of Afghanistan and Iraq, the story would have been different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's not a question. Yeah. Okay. Can I invite another question? Over the lady. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Baker. With the
Please make a question briefly.
Oh, question.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry. My question is basically, I was curious to know from any of the panelists, what impact do you think the current impeachment and political upheaval currently in South Korea will have on the leverage of South Korea to promote world peace, to de-escalate North Korea, and promote good relations with China?
Okay.
Hello, I'm from Uzbekistan. Before asking question, I want to tell one small thing. 3 years ago, Australian tennis team came to Uzbekistan to play Davis Cup match. And the first question of Patrick Rafter, the team captain, was, where is the area where bombs are fallen? Where is the area of war? It was very interesting question. And after 2 days, he said all information, all the question that he asked was shaped on the information that he got from internet, that he was wrong with this. The question is to Mr. Choi, to you. While you were talking about what to talk, how to report global issues, you said about human rights, for example, issues of human rights, and you gave examples of North Korea, Hong Kong, and you said Uzbekistan. For example, don't you think that with giving such examples, that small example changed minds of people? Do you think that I think that it can also be assessed as giving fake information or somehow not accuracy in giving sources. So don't you think that journalists in giving anything, even in the small details, should be very accurate? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a moment. Just a moment. Yeah, first, Mr. Choi can reply to question, and then Dr. Hong will reply to the question. Okay, please.
Thank you. Thank you for asking a lot of questions. Actually, on Ms. Kwan, right? Yeah. Your question: how do we select issues? Yes, you're right. Every newspaper and every editor has his own choice of what gets to publish and whatever. And as you know, editor decides how to utilize whatever the article comes up. And that's why I said free press is very important. When I write on this direction, then there's somebody in our society who writes in this direction. And to tell the truth, today I raised something, and already somebody from Uzbekistan is raising issue. This is the free thing. We talk, we sort of communicate, and I raise issues. And I'm not saying, you're wrong or I'm right, and I'm not saying I'm better than you or whatever. I'm just saying, okay, this is the opinion I have, and this is why, I believe this is the truth, and this is the order of importance, so I report it this way. Sometimes, some other people, in any like Washington Post reports this way, New York Times reports that way, CNN does it different way. And that's the plurality, the diversity is actually correcting things. And if I wrote something wrong, and the next day in our newspaper, there will be appearing, whatever I wrote yesterday's article, I did it wrong. I checked the fact and it was wrong thing. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. So things like this happens. But on selection issues, any newspaper, and you're a journalist as well, and you have your own choice of making what gets to be published and what's not. And, I'm not saying that I am 100% correct. I'm just saying that I'm just presenting my opinion or my idea on this case. And always, in our society, and Mr. Park, Chairman Park, is from different news organization. He can counter-argue me, through his news outlet and so on. So that's why I said, fake news, the best thing for fake news is to have a free press, and then it will be self-correcting itself. And when we are able to self-correct all these things, the society always gets better. That's why that was my logic. And when you said about South China Sea, no, I didn't choose just South China Sea. I just put it up there because it happened to grab my attention for the past 6 months or 8 months. And yes, you're right. There's this horrendous military conflicts going on, in Baghdad, in Syria, and then we have other conflicts with Japan and so on. There's a lot of things going on, yes. But again, you are free to raise your issue, and you can say that, why did you do it? That my only reason is because I have the space limitation and just time constraint, and I just put that up because I felt that that was something I can get your attention. I certainly got your attention, and if I put, I'm sure somebody from Argentina has not much interest in South China Sea, unless I write something about Falkland. He will be very upset about it. But so it's a free thing. Basically, free communication, free press, freedom of speech, and freedom of ideas will correct all these things. And I know maybe I'm too vague, but I think still that's the most powerful tool we can all rely on. And on our journalist from Uzbekistan, I'm not saying Uzbekistan has a serious human rights issues and so on, but time to time I read these reports in IPI, certain cases, and I just mentioned it because I'm not saying that Uzbekistan is the only country in the world that would have human rights issues. There are human rights issues. Again, that's not the point. The point that I'm trying to make is human rights issue is something universal. We all know that all human being has the right to live, deserves to live in a good condition and so on. And sometimes, people are politically oppressed because they have different opinions, police sort of harass them, and journalists are sometimes being escorted out, or sometimes, I mentioned about Turkey. I know a good friend of mine is actually in jail right now. So I'm just raising these awareness about human rights issues. I'm not saying, Uzbekistan per se has all these problems. So sorry for that. It's not personal. I'm just, mention it. Just one quick things about Ms. Baker's question about the impeachment process. To tell the truth, for the past 6 months, Korea did not have a president. And this country is still running okay. And not only running okay, actually, I think we might not need a president, and maybe we don't need a president. Maybe we can import somebody, like maybe we can import President Obama to become our head of state. I'm just,
Philippines.
Yeah, personally, I think this Korea has grown up to a stage in which we can run our own things without a president. Yes, you're right. It's sad that we don't have a president, we don't have a heads of state. So the thing that we lack the most right now is, he or she cannot actually go out and do diplomatic things. So we have not had our president going to G20 meetings or this global meetings and so on. That's the real side effects. But whoever comes the next president, yes, I think things will probably get better because now the new president will try to mend things, but God knows, maybe he can make things worse. Okay. So, I think overall, the whole thing will be quite peaceful. Whole transition period will be peaceful, and I think Koreans know that we can live our life, whatever the politic is.
Okay. Dr. Hong also will explain the Korean situation related to president impeachment. Please to pick up the interpretation.
Okay. 어디서 오신 분인지는 정확히 듣지 못했지만 우리 여자 기자분, 방금 우리 최효숙 차장님도 언급이 있었습니다만은 최근에 한국에서 대통령 탄핵 사태로 상당히 물론 말씀하신 것처럼 평화롭지만 상당히 어려운 국면을 지금 지나가고 있다고 할 수 있습니다. 이것이 우리 국내 정세나 민주주의나 혹은 중국 혹은 북한과의 관계에 어떤 영향을 미칠 것인가 저의 개인적인 관심사이기도 합니다만 대단히 어려운 주제이기도 합니다. 먼저 국내적으로 보면 저는 이 사태가 한국의 민주주의나 혹은 언론의 자유까지 포함해서 상당히 기여할 수 있는 측면이 있다 이렇게 기대를 하고 싶습니다. 그렇게 기대를 갖고 있기도 하고요. 지금 질문의 주제는 포인트는 그것보다 중국이나 북한과의 관계에 어떤 영향을 미칠 수 있을 것인가. 물론 차기 정부가 어떤 정부가 들어설 것인가에 물론 달려 있으리라고 봅니다만은 기본적으로 지금 확신할 수 있는 것은 이 사태로 인해서 차기 정부가 누가 될 것이냐와 관계없이 언론의 자유를 신장하는 내용의 민주주의 발전에 기여한다고 본다면 그 언론을 통해서 국제 정세의 평화로운 해결에도 궁극적으로 기여할 수 있을 것이다. 또 그렇게 기대한다. 이 정도는 얘기할 수 있지 않을까 이렇게 생각합니다.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I will take just two questions due to the time schedule. A gentleman in the middle and last, Mr. Taegu. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Ahmed Shaban from Al-Anba newspaper, Kuwait. My question is for Ms. Lynn. Speaking about the role of journalists, I mean, we are informing and we are exposing the truth and we are being the voice of the voiceless. But still there's an ongoing war in Syria for 7 years. There is a famine in Somalia. There is civilians who are being buried under the rubble of their homes in Mosul, in Iraq. Do you think it is enough for us to just tell the truth, or there is and there must be something to do more? Thank you.
Microphone.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Teguh Santosa. I'm from Indonesia. As a journalist, we should sometimes and many times cross the border. I visit Pyongyang every year, and but still, every time I tell people, even my own friends, about how looks like in Pyongyang, they don't believe, because the mainstream media, they have different stories. But that's not my question. My question to Yang and Lin, actually, I already raised this question on the table. How do you think if we open again the talk about the nuclearization of North Korea by adding a new member in that talk? So not only 6-party talk, but let's say 7 or 9-party talks and so on. And also to my friend Choi, how do you think after the next coming election, do you think that if we have, in South Korea, if South Korea has a new president from not the current ruling party, if I may say that, do you think that the relationship between South and North Korea will be better again, at least to what we had during Kim Dae-jung and Roh Moo-hyun? Thank you.
Okay. No, okay. First.
So yes, I can understand the frustration that seemed to maybe be coming from you expressing, that there are still conflicts, there are still wars going on, and journalists are going about every day doing their job. So I do understand that, and it is, just as human beings, I think we can all, understand and feel that we don't want to see people suffering, whether that's because of conflict or, lack of food, lack of water. But I do think as journalists, we have that responsibility to tell the truth. There is a term in the US where sometimes journalism, it's like activist journalism, That's a term that I'm seeing being used more and more, where maybe you are behind a certain, maybe it is trying to fix a hunger problem in a certain part of the world. So that's something that maybe as a journalist you feel that you want to bring attention to, and that's the only reason that you go about doing the reporting that you're doing. And that's when you're choosing your sources, you are specifically looking to talk to people who are going to further the cause that you're trying to achieve. I think that work is great. I think the key, though, is you have to be transparent and honest with your viewers and with your users who are reading that information so that it's clear that your end goal is to solve problem X. I think if you are not being transparent and you are not disclosing that, to me, then you are not acting as a journalist because you are not adhering to a code of ethics where you are being transparent, you are being open, and you are, being honest with your viewers about what your end goal is. The other thing I would say is, in my experience, if you really want to make a difference or change something, you really need the public to get behind the cause. And so I think, it is still important, of the utmost importance to publish the facts and only publish the facts. But you have to make sure that the public understands that and wants to then get behind those facts to do something about it. So you have to make it relatable to them. So, when you're talking about conflicts between two countries and taking the emotion out, I can understand that and think that is a smart idea, but you have to also show them or tell them why they would care. So it's not just here's fact A, here's fact B, but it's what that means if fact A happens, or if what person A is saying, this is what it means to you. This is how it could impact you. This is how it affects you. So you're still, taking that emotional maybe side out. You're not getting emotional as a journalist, but people do rely on emotions. So I think really if you want to make a difference, it's making sure the public can relate to the story you're telling. And then it is up to the public themselves to see if they want to take that information and do something with it.
Okay, thank you. Next answer first, Mr. Zhang Yong, and then Mr. Choi. Yes.
Okay, I think your proposal is very interesting. But once again, I want to mention the vice minister, during the lunch, he said something I think is very interesting. He said, China has the key. Well, I don't agree with him, but I think, the point is very interesting. We need to find someone has the key. If we find someone has the key, we can enlarge the 6-party talks to whatever, 12-party talks. But, I don't think it's a good idea before we find, anyone who has the key. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I answer to Pak Tegu, right? That's a question. Pak is the Indonesian way of saying Mr. Right?
Santosa.
Yeah. My friend from Ghana said journalism is the best profession in the world. I tell you, in Korea, it's probably the worst because the life expectancy of journalists in Korea is the shortest, one of the shortest. So I'm not sure if it's the best profession. Yes, I enjoy being a journalist, but I may not live long enough. Park Tae-gu's question is actually, I think some of you have to report some stories about this issue, right? How would South Korea's relationship with North Korea would change if the new president comes in. Yes, it is most likely that we will have a president from a different party, and it is seen and actually expected that the opposition party right now will probably have different approach in dealing with North Korea. Maybe they may try to go back to the sunshine policy like 10 years ago. They may try to engage North Korea in various ways. But the thing is, and I think that's probably what Mr. An, for the Deputy Minister from Foreign Ministry, said today, same thing. I wasn't there, but I know what his line is. And the thing is, Korea is obligated to pursue or follow the UN rule. And the UN rule at the moment forbids any nation to deal with North Korea in a separate way. And I think my worry is, okay, the new government can and may and probably trying very hard to have a dialogue with North Korea in different and probably engage in a different manner, but it will be very difficult for the new government to find this narrow methods that they can actually do anything with North Korea because of all these UN sanctions. And if God forbid, the new government goes against the UN sanctions and things like that, it's gonna be a disaster because, as you all know, a treaty made by any government, previous government or the one after, it's still valid, and you have to go through a certain process to sort of negate that agreement. So it will still take very long time for the new government to implement new methods, or going back to the sunshine policy and so on, before solving this UN sanction issues. So it's a very cautious question, and I know that this opposition party members have very different ideas, and I know that these people who will probably formulate these policies and so on, they're not really really renegades or whatever. They are trying to solve this issue as well. So I really, I'm not saying that they will do wrong things or they will not going into the direction that is a proper whatever. I'm just saying that the tools they have will be very limited. So if they come up with some really good ideas, genius ideas, I would be more welcome to support them. But it remains to be seen how they will come up with this, genius ideas in a very tough situation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now is the time to finish. I think you can enjoy another round chance for discussing. It was very exciting and stimulating. Thank you for your participation for our discussion. And personally, I'd like to say once again, I was very honored to preside this event. Thank you. Okay, the session is closed. Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, this brings us to the end of the special session and conference. We have a short announcement for you. Your name tag indicates the number of the tour bus that will take you to the sites. Please check the number and go down to the lobby on the ground floor to get on the bus. Thank you. 이것으로 2017년 세계 기자대회의 첫날 준비된 특강과 컨퍼런스는 끝이 났습니다. 참가자 여러분들의 명찰을 보시면 각자 탑승하셔야 하는 차량 번호가 붙어 있습니다. 모두 탑승 번호를 확인하신 후 지금 바로 로비 1층으로 내려가셔서 차량에 탑승하시면 되겠습니다. 감사합니다.